Welcome, everyone. I'm going to give you three basically free tools to noticeably improve your testosterone. But before I do that, let's talk about the problem because this is a real one. Yes, testosterone is declining by about 1.2% per year. Now, of course, that number is going to fluctuate a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower, depending on the particular study and the specific population. But the point here is that this is a real problem. But it's not just testosterone, it's also fertility. And even more specifically, one of the reasons that fertility is impaired is not only because of testosterone, but also because of sperm health. And there's research on all of this as well. For example, sperm counts on average are falling by about 1% per year. You can also look at sperm motility, which affects the health of the sperm, therefore fertility success, and so on and so forth. So yeah, this is a very real problem, and that's why I'm sharing this with you. But this is a very convoluted space, isn't it? It can be very confusing. Is it my age? Like, is that inevitable? Is my T going to drop as I get older and there's nothing I can do about it? What do I do about it? Do I have to take TRT? Or maybe it's my toxins? And do we know the cause? So this is a big blind spot on social media, I feel, is, well, twofold. For one, attributing one single or just a couple causes to a health problem. Testosterone doesn't work this way. Fertility doesn't work this way. No single health issue works this way. People are always trying to attach one or two causes to a specific health issue. The body is way too complex for this. It just simply does not work this way. And so what I'm giving you here today, it doesn't work this way either. That being said, there are huge levers that you can pull, which I said are mostly free, that do improve testosterone. And I'll show you the research. And that's why I'm giving this to you, because we don't really hear this. And so the argument that low testosterone impairments to fertility is just idiopathic and we don't know the cause of it, that's plain false. And therefore, an extension of that argument, it's idiopathic, therefore you need TRT or you need this or that. It's just not true. And I'm going to show you that. So for sure, I understand this space is very convoluted in terms of what you are told on social media and the news, etc. But the actual problem that we're talking about, the low T, the impairments to fertility, the drop in sperm counts, that is not confusing. That is very clear. That's why we need to talk about this. That's why it's so important. And yeah, this is very important to remember. So when I teach, I don't, if you've been following me for a while, you'll already know this. I will never just give you the protocol or give you the tool. There's a reason for that. It's not because I'm trying to drag you along or sell you something. It's because if you want to be able to apply these things, you need to actually understand it, because I'm not always going to be here just to give you that protocol. Now, there's many issues why I'm actually going to teach the explanation behind things so that you can understand it. Of course, there's many other reasons to that, but it's just an important takeaway, and this is a big blind spot on social media, so don't fall for this trap. But let's get to the big levers, because there's an abundance of research showing that you can make pretty simple changes for the most part to your lifestyle, to your diet, to your fitness regime, which do measurably increase testosterone and also measurably improve fertility. I'm not going to talk much about the fertility today. Let's focus about testosterone. So in no particular order, I should be clear, body fat percentage, the title's right there. It is the best metric for testosterone. And so here's a nice study to summarize this. Body fat percentage was negatively correlated with testosterone levels in men. And there's an abundance of research to show this. The higher your body fat percentage, the greater your likelihood, because there is exceptions, the greater your likelihood of having low testosterone. You can see here that as lean mass, so this chart is showing lean mass. As your lean mass goes up, your testosterone goes up as well. On the flip side, as your body fat percentage goes up, your testosterone will come down. And as I said, there's an abundance of research to show this. It's not just a single study. Here's another one. Here's another one, and this one looks specifically at leg body fat percentage. So the legs are very unique for many different reasons. And this one showed that even just fat in your legs was associated with testosterone. Here's another one, body fat percentage significantly associated with low testosterone. Now, yes, to be clear, many of these are association, but here's the thing. We also have mechanisms. So we know literally exactly how this works. And this is just a very short summary. I go into more detail on this in my health levels course. Why does higher body fat percentage decrease testosterone? Well, for one, it increases concentration of this testosterone stealing enzyme called aromatase, which will literally take your testosterone and convert it into estrogen. Second mechanism is inflammation. So maybe you already know that body fat is literally its own organ, especially fat of the visceral type. So this is where we get into the nuance. Not all body fat is created equal. Visceral body fat, the type that forms around your organs, is far more detrimental. And this is what really harms testosterone. If you have an abundance of belly fat, it's likely you have the visceral fat. And the reason this is so detrimental is because it will also it will also release, like, this is crazy. Think about this. This body fat, visceral type, will literally release its very own pro-inflammatory signals, which communicate with the rest of your body. And one of the things this inflammation does is that it will disrupt the signal that goes from your brain to your testes, specifically the Leydig cells, to produce testosterone. So that whole process is impaired by inflammation as a result of an abundance of belly fat of the visceral type specifically. Here's another mechanism, decrease in sex hormone binding globulin. Now, sometimes this in the short term can increase testosterone, but long term it does impair testosterone. And I go into more detail on this in my metabolic health levels, because sex hormone binding globulin is also strongly influenced by our blood sugar control, more specifically our insulin sensitivity. And I get into that in more detail in other courses. And then the final example is this bidirectional loop. It's a little bit of a sinister loop, but this is how it works. If you have low testosterone, the lower your testosterone, the greater your reduction in lipolysis. So literally your body's ability to liberate stored fat so that it can burn that fat for energy, leading to more android fat storage. Android fat is that belly fat specifically around your midsection, leading to further testosterone suppression. So that's the vicious cycle right there. Here's tool number 2. You can compare endurance training to resistance training. If you've been in this space for a long time, this is nothing new to you, but there are an abundance, and I've only summarized a couple here, head-to-head studies comparing the effects of endurance training to resistance training on your testosterone. To be clear, if you are doing nothing, if you're sedentary and you do not train at all, obviously that is the absolute worst thing you can do, and that will definitely tank your testosterone. But if we're speaking in terms of, let's say you only have your father, like I am, you have 2 young kids, anyways, I get it, tight on time. Let's say you can only do 45 minutes per week. What is the most efficient option to support testosterone? It's resistance training. And you can see this here. If you do more and more aerobic training, more and more endurance training, it will actually over time decrease your testosterone. And here's the studies. You can look it up. You can look at these. I've summarized them here. It will over time. Now, again, to be clear, I'm not saying that an aerobic training is bad. Absolutely not. Tons of benefits there. We're talking in terms of what's most efficient. What is the best bang for your buck if you only have a given amount of time, as most middle-aged men do. You don't have infinite time to work out. Here's tool number 3. So the unfortunate reality, but it is the reality, and so let's deal with it. This is the highest chemical exposure time in human history. I mean, that we know of, unless we're completely missing something. Here's some numbers. 200,000 new chemicals being added each week. There's a Canadian study showing that there's 287 chemicals in cord blood, so literally pre-polluted before the child is even born. And again, that's just the reality. Now, we can't do a ton to prevent that. For sure we can mitigate it, but these are the facts. So what does this have to do with sex hormones? Like what does this high chemical exposure have to do? Well, these chemicals get into our body via inhalation, ingestion, or transdermal absorption if we're rubbing it on our skin, meaning we can get these just quote unquote chemicals. There's many different names for them, phthalates, BPAs, etc. You can go down the list. We get them from fragrances, plastics, receipts, canned foods, cosmetics, tap water, heating our meals in Tupperware container in a microwave. The list goes on. It's impossible to prevent this. It is entirely possible to dramatically reduce our exposure. And in fact, it's for the most part free because all you're doing is removing things. And there's many different mechanisms by which these interfere with testosterone in the body. I'll give you one example. Many of these, and this is the reason they're called xenoestrogens, which means estrogen mimicking, is they will literally bind to estrogen receptors and promote downstream estrogen signaling, which if you're a man, you actually want some of that. You do not want copious amounts of that, which is what we are getting. And again, this is very well supported by the scientific literature. We're seeing more and more and more and more of this. And thankfully, it is finally coming. It's slow, but finally coming to mainstream. And this is everywhere, at least in developed countries. And there's something interesting to that conversation too, for another time. But there's many studies on this. So how do we prevent exposure? And how do we promote excretion of these once they do get in our body? Well, I'm just going to give you one example. As you can see, there's 4 primary mechanisms by which the body will get rid of these chemicals. Because remember, you can't completely prevent your exposure, but you can absolutely support healthy detoxification. I'm only showing you one way to do this. So toxins can be excreted in your feces. Italicized can here because it's not definitive. So you need an initial signal to release those toxins from your stored body fat, which is where your body keeps them. It does this as a protective mechanism. It will encapsulate it in fat so that toxin can't react with the rest of your body. So it packs it away in fat. That's good. That's a protective mechanism, which means when you start to sweat, you sauna, you lose an abundance of weight, especially very rapidly, those toxins are finally released from your stored fat. This is lipolysis. That creates the opportunity, and it's only an opportunity, to excrete this. And one of the ways it's excreted is in your feces. But there's a problem. There's something called enterohepatic recirculation. So this is where your body literally recycles bile. Why does that matter? Well, because bile is one of the ways your body carries these toxins to your feces to excrete it. Meaning, if you're not excreting those toxins, like just imagine this, this is literally what's happening. You have that feces, it's ready to go. You have those toxins there that could be excreted along with that feces. However, you have this bile that's also down there, and that bile is going to be recycled back up to your liver, to your gallbladder, so that it can be reused, because bile is very expensive to create. This is the recirculation. So what you want to prevent is those toxins being scooped up by bile and brought back up into the body. Again, if you've been in this space for a while, you've no doubt heard about this, the reabsorption of toxins. Maybe you haven't heard about this specific mechanism, but this is one of the ways it works. But here's the key. Here's your tool. It's pretty cheap. You might already be doing it. You can interrupt this reabsorption and actually ensure that those toxins do indeed be excreted. And that's with fiber. Fiber actually attaches bile to your feces so that it's not recirculated. It's instead excreted out. So isn't this funny how fiber gets such a bad rap on social media? But it is a powerful tool. The last thing I'll say about this is constipation is one of the most harmful things for this entire process. So if you're a man and you're constipated, not good for your testosterone, you need to support this. Fiber is one of the tools to help you. I have all of this and much more in my health levels community. Most of what I've shown you here is in my testosterone level 0, which is the beginner level. And that is where I simplify the convoluted testosterone discussion to give you clear answers to support your testosterone. And as I hopefully showed you today, many of those are free or nearly free.